are you ready for the end of the transition period? On the call today, I've got my colleagues Isabel. There's Isabel over there. We've got Monica, and we've also got Patricia joining us. And hosting this is Costa Women. We've got Ali Meehan there. And I'm a big warm welcome to Charmaine Arbouin, who is the British Consul for Andalucia and the Canary Islands. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us and to participating in the seminar. And also, thank you to everyone who sent through the questions. We've had a lot of questions, and we're hoping to answer those during the course of the seminar. And right at the bottom of your screen, you'll see our colleague Owen McGeer there. He's at the bottom of the screen because he's in Bilbao. So he's joining us from Bilbao, and there's lots of people on the call joining us from all over Spain. What we're going to do is we're recording this session, and it will be then placed on the My Law in Spain YouTube channel. We had a lot of questions through from you earlier. We filtered those through to Charmaine, who's going to kindly answer those. But before we start, what we want to do is just get some basic facts right. We're going to run a couple of polls just to see at what stage of the residency process you are. And then basically, as we answer the questions, if there's time for any more, then we've got a chat box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be able to answer any further questions there. Okay? So basically, well, let's start with the poll, Ali. And the poll is, are you living in Spain already, or are you planning on moving to Spain before the end of 2020? So if you could just click on that. Ali, do you have the results of the poll?
So we have 31% who are going to move before the end of 2020, but 56% are already here.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so those of you who are already here, we'll be talking about basically the residency card that you may have now and the residency card you can apply for. And those who are thinking of moving to Spain, we'll be talking to you about the brand new card that you'll be able to apply for. If you haven't done so already, if you're not speaking, just please do mute your computers so we don't get lots of background noise. And really, I just wanted to talk about the facts, okay? So, and just to clarify some of these. If you live in Spain for more than 3 months a year, you have an obligation to become a Spanish resident. If you spend more than 6 months a year in Spain, then you have an obligation to become a Spanish tax resident and pay tax in Spain on worldwide assets and income. And if you spend between 3 and 6 months a year in Spain, then you are a resident, but not a Spanish tax resident. Okay, so I just wanted to make that absolutely clear for everyone so they know whether or not they're going to be a tax resident spending more than 6 months a year here, or not a tax resident spending less than 6 but more than 3. And the Spanish tax year quite sensibly runs from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. There is still time to apply for and become a resident in Spain in 2020. And the paperwork to apply for the residency is basically, if you're over the age of 65, then you can apply for Form S1 from the Social Security Office in Newcastle. If you're under the age of 65, then you'll need private medical cover. You register on the census, which is known as the Padron, at your local town hall. You've got to prove income, and you've got to have proof of an address. And the proof of an address can be either a 12-month rental contract or a property deed. Plus, of course, the application forms. And as of the 6th of July, because of the new law that came into force, basically it's a 3-stage process. So you present the documents, you can present those, you apply for an appointment, you apply for those appointment online, present the documentation, or they can present it online for you. You then go along to the police station, you hand them over the photograph and they'll give you, they'll take your thumbprint, and then you'll have to go back at a later stage to collect the card. If you're in Spain, then us as legal representatives can apply for you online, and then you'll have to come back in Spain to do the thumbprint and pick up your card. Okay, so that's basically the general criteria, and obviously there's some application forms that you have to complete depending on whether you're an existing resident or a new resident. And the income requirements, that unfortunately depends on where you are in Spain and the town hall the police station or foreigners office that you're dealing with at the time. But by and large, you're looking at having at least up to €9,000 in a bank account per person, and then income of about €850 per month. But unfortunately, one of the things that we've learned about Spain is that it's consistent in that it's inconsistent, and it depends on who you go to and which town hall or police station you go to on the day and who you sit in front of. They might ask you for a different amount or less or more documentation. So it's very important to check. If you're applying for residency, we can check on your behalf how much is required for the place that you're applying for residency for. Okay, so that's basically the general procedure, and then we're going to start with questions for Charmaine. Isabel?
Yes. Hello, Charmaine. The first question is, what is the Foreign and Commonwealth Office advising British people to do at the present time?
Okay, so this one's a really easy one. I can answer this question. Thank you for starting gently with me. So I suppose the first piece of advice is don't panic. Yeah, there's still time. The second bit of advice is to get all of your paperwork in order and to make sure that you are registered for residency. I don't have the documents in front of me. I know this may seem really silly, but there is quite often a lot of confusion around what registration for residency means. So it is not the NIE, which is just a white piece of paper if you came as long ago as I did. It's not empadronamiento. It is registration that has to be done either at the Policía Nacional or through extranjería. Up until now, it will have been a green document that people have. So it was either an A4 green document or it was a credit card sized green document. If you have either of those, you are already registered for residency. Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which probably should be the first thing, is ensure that you're clear about your access to healthcare. If you are registering new for residency, you have to have healthcare provision. That is either because you're working and you're paying into the Spanish system, or it's because you're or you can have it as a pensioner through the S1 system, which means that you've transferred your rights from the UK to Spain, and it means that you have access to both the Spanish system and the UK system. Or people might have to take out private health insurance. Quite often people who are early retired are not working and therefore not cotizando, so they're not paying into the Spanish system, they're not retired, so they're not entitled to the S1, and therefore they have to take out private health insurance. Or the fourth option is through the Convenio Especial. If anyone wants to ask me about that afterwards, they can do, and that's for people who may have pre-existing conditions or for whatever reason cannot take out private healthcare insurance but do need some healthcare cover. So what have I done so far? I've done residency, healthcare, and my third thing would be driving licenses. Change your driving license. If Spain is your place of residence, it is fairly straightforward for you to do an exchange of your UK license to a Spanish driving license. There is a reasonable lead-in time for this, and you do have to do the first bit of the trámite online. You cannot do the exchange of your driving license until you're registered as resident. So you begin to see why it's important to make sure that you're registered. And I would say that just one last thing is if people would check their passports and make sure that your passport has at least 6 months validity on it. So they're the four things: healthcare, residency, driving license, check your passport.
Hello everybody, and hello Charmaine. I have a question for you. What were the main changes to the law of 6th of July?
Okay, so it depends on what your circumstances are, but basically all that people have to do now is make sure that they're registered as resident. In actual fact, the advice that we're giving is no different from the advice that we were giving to people before. The withdrawal agreement so your protection under the withdrawal agreement only applies if you are able to evidence that you were lawfully resident in Spain before the 31st of December 2020. Yeah, so that's the really important thing, and that was the same before and after. All that happened on the 6th is that there was the introduction of a new registration system. So instead of the green documents that we've all been used to getting up until now, there is now the TIE, which is a credit card sized document. If anybody knows what the DNI looks like, it's pretty similar to that. It has your huella on it, it has your photograph on it. It is arguably much more useful for us than the green bit of paper because it's photo ID, and it's easy to put in your wallet, and it's easy for you to have that instead of having to take your passport around with you. But in essence, there is nothing except that the system, it is now a TIE that you're applying for if you're applying the first time, rather than the EU green residency document. That's it. And I'm not sure whether this is different or not. I'll just touch on it, which is if you are a green certificate holder, you do not have to change it immediately. I think in the long term, it is going to be worth your while changing it. As I say, the new TIE is much more user-friendly and much easier for you to carry around as evidence of your right to residency. If you want to change from your green card or your green A4 document to the new TIE document, you do it through the Policía Nacional. You have to go online, you will ask for an appointment, you will have to take along your green residency certificate, your passport. Trying to think, you have to do the paperwork, you've got to fill out the form, and you have to pay the tax. You won't get the card immediately. You present your documents, you'll have to come back 3 weeks later or whatever to pick up your card. So that's all done through the Policía Nacional. If you are registering for the first time, your application first has to go through extranjería. So you have to present the documents to extranjería. As Alex has said, all of that can be done online. It can be done by a third party, a lawyer, gestor, or whatever. And then there is the state reserves the right to take up to 3 months. I think it's not going to take up to 3 months, but they reserve the right to take up to 3 months to assess your application. During that period, they will give you a volante. They will give you something that shows that you have put in your application. And then once a decision is made, you then have to follow the second step, which is to go to the Policía Nacional and do all of the fingerprints and everything. And you only have a month within which you have to make that application. So that is probably slightly different from the way that we did it before, but essentially they're the same requirements. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Charmaine. So, yeah, there is a lot of confusion around at the moment in that if you've got an existing green card, the existing green credit card which says Residency on it, is there an obligation to change it to the TIE card? And what you've said is there isn't, but it's advisable to do so because there's a nice document to have in your wallet, so you don't have to keep on getting your passport out. So the police we're talking to at the local stations, etc., they're recommending that we do actually get that TIE. They're saying it's voluntary this year and it could be compulsory next year. But yeah, what do you think on that?
Yeah, and the operative word is could be, yeah, compulsory next year. All that I can tell you is what it says in the legislation, which is you do not have to change your documents. And anybody that goes and looks at the BOE, they will see that there is the option for you to do it, but you do not have to do it. Personally, and I think it is down to personal preference, I think everyone will see that the new TIE is much more user-friendly than the green document. And if you're dealing with any Spanish institutions, they're much more used to seeing something that looks like a DNI than they are to the green document. So I think it's easier for you to carry around. It's photo ID, it's got your fingerprints on it. it is much more user-friendly. But I would just say to people, there is no rush for you to do it. So you don't have to sort of think, oh my God, I've got to do that before the 30th of December, I've got to do it as soon as I can. If I'm being honest, from a consular perspective, the people that we're really pushing are the people that are not in the system as yet, because it will become much more difficult for them after the end of December. So I would push those people to please make your appointments and please get your, start the process. For everyone else, it's much more straightforward.
And another question, Charmaine, that we've received is people asking whether if they apply for a Spanish residency, whether this will entitle them to have free of movement in all European Union countries in the future. I don't know whether you could provide with some comments about it.
I should know the answer to that, shouldn't I? And off the top of my head, I can't remember it. I have a feeling that we are still, whether you are Spanish resident or not, you are still a UK national, and so we are still covered in all other EU countries by the 90 and 180 days rule, visa-free, which means that in any 6-month period, you are allowed to travel to other EU countries. You are allowed to be in them only for 90 days. I know that comes as a surprise to people, but you're not an EU national. You're still a UK national. All that the withdrawal agreement is conferring on you is the right to reside in the country that you've chosen to reside in, and that is Spain. So in Spain, there are no restrictions on you. But, and I don't know whether Alex wants to comment on this, but my understanding is that outside of Spain, so outside of the country where you are registered as resident, you will still have to abide by the 90 and 180 day rule.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one, Charmaine. Yeah.
But the good news is that your health card will be valid. So if you've got the Spanish TSE, Tarjeta Sanitaria Europea, that applies. You are covered for health insurance when you travel to the rest of Europe.
I have another question, Charmaine, that I received from one client. It's, will my husband be entitled to automatic residency if I already have it?
So we need to be careful with the wording automatic residency. So in the withdrawal agreement, there is provision for anyone who is already legally resident for there to be family reunification. So close family members will have a right to join you, yeah, but they will still have to meet the residency requirements. So just because you are a resident doesn't mean to say that your husband is going to meet the residency requirements. So there will still be, he will still have to prove that he has healthcare, and he will still have to prove that that between you have sufficient income. So he can be your dependent, and the good thing is that that right will continue beyond December 2020, as long as the relationship exists before December 2020. So if your husband lives in the UK now and you are registered as resident in Spain now, yeah, but your husband doesn't want to join you until July next year, even though the transition period has ended, the fact that he was your husband before the end of the transition period will give him the right to apply under the withdrawal agreement. I hope I haven't made that too complicated.
No, that was nice and clear, Charmaine. Thank you for that. Okay, Isabel?
So yes, we have a very common situation of people who is working in both countries. So for example, someone who is resident in Spain, but still tax resident in the UK if they spend more than 183 days. And one of the questions was whether Brexit will affect how they work, traveling back and forth from UK to Spain. Perhaps you can give us some ideas, some comments, Charmaine.
The answer is nothing changes. You will be able to continue to work in the UK, and I think they say that they were, yes, sorry, they're a carer and registered as resident in Spain, but are resident in the UK for tax purposes. I'm sure that at some point Alex will touch on tax. that's absolutely fine. Nothing will change for you. You will be able to continue to do that.
So actually, let's just touch on that now then, Charmaine. Yes. So again, it's basically someone can live in Spain for up to 6 months a year, 183 days, and if they're below the 183 days, then they're not a Spanish tax resident. Okay.
I have another situation of a client that states that in June next year, that will be 2021, this person will have been resident for 5 years, and he has the current residency card, the one of the small size green credit card style. So the question is, do this person still have to apply for permanent residency next May? And if so, will obtain the same style of residency card, or it will be automatically issue one of the new TA cards instead?
Okay, I'll answer that, but can I just say one additional thing on the previous question, which is I'm assuming that the person that asked the question about being registered in Spain but tax resident in the UK is a UK national, because that would make a difference. But I mean, if somebody wants to come back to us about that later, we can certainly answer that question in more detail. Going back to this question about reaching 5 years next year, it is entirely down to the individual. So you may want to move ahead and apply for the TIE now. You can do that. You have a perfect right to do that. What that would mean is that you would be issued with a TIE that had a validity of only 5 years, yeah, because you haven't reached permanent status yet. And then when you reached permanent status, so in July of next year, you could then go in and ask to change it, and you would then get a 10-year TIE. Another option is not doing anything with it at the moment and just waiting until you get to the 5 years, which would be July next year, and then going in and changing it then. So it's entirely up to you what you choose to do. You do not have to exchange it now. You can change it if you want to. If you do change it, you will get a 5-year TIE validity, which you can then change to 10 years when you reach the 5 years, July next year. Or you can wait until July next year and you would just do one exchange and you would get a 10-year document.
There is also, we have received also questions in relation to, well, the health insurance policy and when this is required. So for example, one of the questions was for someone who is currently dependent on the husband's UK issued S1, and this person shall be applying for the S1 in her own right upon reaching 66 retirement age in July next year. So the question is, will my dependency status on my husband's S1 be sufficient when applying for my permanent residency in June, or will I be expected to produce private health insurance policy details when making the application?
So so this person is planning to, sorry, I've missed some of the detail. So this person is planning to apply for residency now? Hasn't got residency yet?
Is currently dependent on the husband's UK issued S1 and shall be applying for an S1 in her own right upon reaching 66 next year by July. So I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the information is incomplete, but I'll do my best to answer the question, which is she can, as long as she's already registered as for her healthcare under her husband's S1. So that's one step that has to happen, and it sounds as if she has already done that. Yeah. If she's already done that, that is sufficient for residency. Yeah. If she hasn't done residency as yet, so I'm not sure whether she's a resident or not, in July she can do it in her own right. Yeah. My suggestion is that, so it sounds as though she's possibly not resident yet.
Yeah, that's
in which case she should apply using her husband's healthcare. Yeah, okay. As long as she's already registered as his dependent with the S1. If the lady in question needs any advice, I should probably say at this point that it's worth people just, if they just Google Living in Spain Guide, gov.uk, that is our exhaustive guide to everything that we could think of, yeah? And if people go into that guide, they will find information on healthcare, and they will find the website and the information about who in Spain in the embassy is able to help them if they're coming up against difficulty, because we do know that at the moment there's been a change in INSS. Is that right? INSS, and it's really quite difficult for people to get through. You used to be able to phone, and now you have to register all of your documents online, and it's not necessarily that straightforward. So if people go to the Living in Spain guide, go to look under healthcare and that, and they will see the healthcare team in Spain, and we can certainly help out with that. And if I can just do a plug at this point also, the UK has funded 3 organisations in Spain. One is called Babelia, that covers the Alicante province. One is called Age in Spain, which is covering Catalonia and the Balearics. And then the other is called IOM, which I can't remember what they call, what it stands for, International Organisation for Migration, probably. Maybe I can give Alex and Ali these details so that you could perhaps put them on your website for people. Those 3 organisations are providing support to UK nationals who are having difficulty registering as residents. Not everybody, but anybody that's in a vulnerable situation, or it's a more complicated situation. For instance, you're having difficulty with your S1. So if we can, I can plug those organisations. They are there specifically to help vulnerable Brits, and you can certainly approach them.
I have another question from a couple that they are retired and lives in Tenerife. They own a property and they have sufficient income, and even though they do not intend to live in Spain permanently, they want to stay during the winter, and that will be more than 3 months, but less than 6 months. Do they have to apply for residency?
Okay, so this is one of those areas that's always been a little bit grey. So I think that Alex would probably say that if you're planning to be here for more than 3 months, you should apply for residency. And I think that is probably what the legislation says. But there is something else which is a rider to that, which is if you're planning to be here for more than 3 months and you consider Spain to be your main home, yeah, you should apply for residency. The swallows are a difficult category. Basically, that's what I call them, the swallows, because they come for the winter and they want to spend more than 3 months. We have flagged this to the Spanish authorities, and the Spanish government is well aware of this issue. Our best guess is that there are something like 250,000 swallows that come to Spain every year. So it's a significant contribution to the Spanish economy. At the moment, it's really clear that as part of the EU negotiations, swallows are probably not going to be addressed. Yeah. So it will have to be a bilateral agreement. The Spanish are aware of this. I think there is a glimmer of a light that they will come up with something, but at this point we don't know what that something is, right? So the rules as they stand at the moment, and your options at the moment, are 90 in 180 days, which is fine for some people, but not fine for other people. And the other option that we know exists, and I don't know whether Alex wants to comment on this, is the non-lucrative visa. And we know that that is available to non-EU nationals. You have to have something like 30,000, yeah? And that gives you the right to reside, but not to work. If you are planning to stay beyond the 90 days, then you are clearly into a visa regime. And the non-lucrative visa is the only option that we're aware of that exists at the moment. I don't know if you want to say anything else, Alex, on that.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been advising clients to go down the non-lucrative visa for the moment because as you said, the requirements, the income requirements are much more onerous than the present requirements. So we're acting in the firm. We're acting for clients from all over the world to apply for residency. Some of those are the golden visa, who buy a property for more than 500,000 euros, and others who just want to come out here, apply for the visa, and stay here for a year at a time. And as you said, it's typically about 24 to 25,000 pounds or euros for the main applicant, and then 6,000 for each applicant, so each beneficiary. Whereas at the moment, depending on the region you are in, so for example, Tenerife are asking for 6,500 euros per person, Alicante is 9,000. So it's easier to meet the residency requirements if you as it is at the moment, the present system. But I think you're right, Charmaine. Next year, the lucrative visa is something that we'll have to look at. But if advising the swallows at the moment, I'd say, look, if you're here for more than 3 months in a consecutive period, I'd apply for residency. Because they can, if they're over the age of 65, they can obtain Form S1, and hopefully then they'd be able to, certainly this year, they would be able to plug into the Spanish healthcare system.
Very, very quick question. So I'm currently in the UK. I have a property in Spain, and due to the current lovely restrictions that we've been put under, it's not advisable for me to travel out to Spain. I'm planning on setting up a Spanish a Spanish residential teaching school in Spain. I have a property in the south of Spain that I bought last year, and I need to just kit it out and get it ready for this. But can I apply for this TIE from the UK, or have I got to get over to Spain and do it before the end of the year and actually start applying? Because my intention is to be in Spain by the end of the year, but can I do it from the UK, or have I got to be in Spain to actually start this process?
Okay, let me answer that, Charmaine. So basically, yes, you can. You're going to be able to apply for the residency right up until the end of this year. Okay.
From the UK.
Well, you've got to be in Spain to submit the application online. So we can submit the application online for you, and you have to be in Spain at the time. We would need you to have the Padron certificate, which is the census. We'd also need to see bank statements from you, confirming that you've got sufficient income to live on, depending on your age, whether you're over, whether you can rely on Form S1 or you'll need private medical cover, depending on your age. But basically, we prepare that paperwork, and we can submit those documents for you online when you're out in Spain. So I would suggest, after this call, contact us. We'll start the process. You let us know when you're coming out, and we'll line everything up to submit the application into the authorities. And then at some stage, you'll have to come out again to present, to go to the police station with your photos, and also for your thumbprint, and then to collect the card. Okay, so it can be done this year, but it takes some time to collate all these documents. So I'd say, contact us after this, and we can start the ball rolling for you. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Isabel.
Yeah, possibly most of these questions, well, some of them have been already, we've already mentioned something about that, but in this case, it's someone who owns a property in Spain, and they are currently spending around 5 months a year, and they understand that, well, following Brexit, they will only be able to stay for 90 days in a rolling 180 days. And this person was also asking about the health cover as a concern, as at the present they use the E11 card, which they understand will no longer be valid from 31st December 2020.
Yeah, I mean, the EHIC, it depends on the age of the person, obviously. So EHICs for people that are covered under the withdrawal agreement, if you are an S1 holder, so if you are state pension age, it continues to be valid. Yeah. If the person has been using the EHIC, if the person is asking, can they use the EHIC as proof of healthcare to apply for residency? No.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Charmaine, so we're talking to people on the call at the seminar now about people about how to apply for residency now. But of course, there's a lot of people who are thinking about moving to Spain next year. Now, at the moment, as we've talked and you've mentioned, Brexit is not really going to affect the people that are in Spain and get residency this year, because their residency rights will be protected, and they'll just have to renew their residency in 5 or 10 years' time. But for the new people coming next year, do we know what the rules are going to be?
It's infuriating because no, we don't. But it's also one of the reasons why I kind of keep insisting to people that if you have the slightest notion that you want to come and live here next year, yeah, or you're here already and you're kind of thinking that you want to stay, my advice to people is just do it now. We know what the rules are now. We have no idea what the rules will be next year, and all that we can look at the moment is as a guide is the rules for people who are third country nationals now. Alex, you will have a better idea than I have, that the income requirements are certainly much higher than they are for us at the moment. So if there is anyone who sort of thinks, I'm here, I think I'm going to want to reside in Spain, do it now. The other thing that is worth remembering is once you have applied for residency and once you've become a residency, you're not selling your soul to the devil. It's not as if you can't change your mind. So you can choose to be a resident now, and 6 months down the road you can say, actually this is not going to work for me, I don't actually want to be a resident, and you can deregister as residents. Yeah. So from my perspective, there is very little that you lose by registering for residency if you see Spain as your place of your permanent place of residence. I don't know whether that feels the same for you, Alex.
No, I agree with you. I mean, if you're going to live here for more than 6 months, then I'd say, become resident and change your driving license over. If you're going to be here in Spain between 3 and 6 months, I wouldn't change your driving license over. I'd keep your UK license, because you're still going to be a UK taxpayer. But yeah, I think we are talking to people there. There's an obligation, Charmaine, actually, not to apply. You intend to spend more than 3 months in Spain, so you've got to become a resident, but you don't have to wait for 3 months to apply. So if you intend to spend more than 3 months, that's when you apply. So yeah, people can start the process now. And really, next year we think it might be, if British people haven't got a residency card, they'll only be able to spend 90 days in a 180-day period. And then there might be some form of visa system to come in and out. We don't know about that yet. And also, we don't know how much money they'll need in a bank account to qualify for residency. But as you said, non-Europeans, and as I mentioned earlier, need approximately 24,000 to 25,000 per applicant for the main applicant, and then 6,000 for the beneficiary. And what's very important, and people will see this in the news as the discussions between the UK and the EU progress, is that if the UK says, look, we'll let European nationals come into the UK to work, and they have to be earning and have a contract earning £25,000, then Spain will reciprocate on that, won't they, Charmaine? So
yeah, I think that's fairly, and the UK have set the bar quite high already. So I think even though the EU have not sort of commented on it yet, I suspect that we can expect that it will be reasonably high for here as well. I mean, there are all sorts of variables, and it's really difficult to, none of us are futurólogos, so it's really difficult to know what will happen. There is a difference, obviously, in the kind of demographic of UK nationals that come to Spain, and they're not generally competing for employment. So, and it could be that Spain look at us and say, actually, they're mostly older people, or or early retired people who then bring family with them that spend a lot of money, and it's in our interest to make it a bit easier for people to spend a long time. As I said on the Swallows, I can't swear to it, and I really only ought to speak about what is fact, but I'm fairly certain that it will not be long before the Spanish think about what the arrangements can be for Swallows, because there is so much demand. And if you've got, we only have 360,000 Brits registered as resident in Spain. We know that there are about 250,000 Swallows. That's incredible. Why would you want to compete with countries like Portugal, who are making it easy for Brits to go and spend long periods of time there, without even mentioning the tax breaks that they're offering for Brits that want to, that want to go and retire to Portugal. I am 90-something% certain that there will be some special arrangement for swallows, but we're not there yet. And so we can only deal in what is. And what we know is that at the moment it's 90 in 180 days. And if you register for residency, and it's not just about, for me, the registering for residency is not just about the being able to spend more than 3 months and being able to be here for whatever length of time you want. It's the other protections that are allowed, that it gives as well. So there are things like your if you work here, your pension contributions will continue to be aggregated. You will continue to be entitled to the maximum level of pension, and you'll be able to bring your UK contributions and your Spanish contributions together so that you get the best final package. There are things like, even though I'm not quite at retirement age yet, if I am protected under the withdrawal agreement because I've registered as resident, then whenever I come to retire, I am entitled to the uprating of my UK pension every year, which I'm not guaranteed to get if I'm not registered as resident and protected under the withdrawal agreement. So there are lots of reasons why, if you are here, you should register. Yeah, you are in a much better position than we think people will be afterwards, who come afterwards.
Another question I received from a British national that normally spend 180 days each year here in Spain, although due to the current situation, while he was trying to come back to the UK and several flights were cancelled, he has spent now almost 6 months in Spain. So the question is that does it mean that he will not be able to come back to Spain until next year, 2021, or if there is some special dispensation agreed due to the COVID situation?
Okay, so I'll mention 2 things here. To answer the specific question, no, because we're in the transition period, and so nothing changes until the 1st of January 2021. So at the moment, as EU nationals, we have freedom of movement. We can spend as much time in Europe as we want. Yeah. So the fact that you have spent more than the time that you would ordinarily spend is not an issue in terms of 90 and 180 days. However, you might want to be careful about tax liability. And I know that there is a request from an international organisation, I can't remember which one it is, that countries don't, that they're a little bit lenient around coronavirus, because there are lots of people who have ended up stuck, for lack of a better word, against their will. They didn't want to necessarily be caught in the country that they are, and they will fall foul of the 183-day rule. And there's a request for governments to be lenient on that. Spain have not announced, and they have not said they will be particularly lenient. So I would recommend that people are very careful in ensuring that they don't overstay for tax purposes. But that's separate from the question that the gentleman or the lady was asking. It doesn't at the moment, the 90 and 180 day rule doesn't apply until next year, so don't worry about it.
Okay, thanks for that, Charmaine. But basically then, one of the other questions, probably best for Isabel, because in the office, not only do we do residences, we act for clients buying, selling, inheriting property, and we write wills for clients, as well as lasting powers of attorney. And one of the questions, Isabel, is whilst the UK was part of the EU, it's possible to have a very simple English will that stated that English law would apply. Do you think this will change after Brexit, Isabel?
Not really. I mean, any foreigner can make a Spanish will, including the choice of law for the law of nationality, and this is regardless the country of this person, whether this country is part of the European Union or not. Now, to clarify the question, it is not that you choose your British will to apply in Spain. What you're choosing is the British law to rule the distribution of your Spanish assets. So instead of using a Spanish law, which, for example, states that 2/3 of the estate has to go to the children, you can choose your law of nationality if you're British national, and then the criteria is that there is free disposal of assets. So what you're choosing is really the law that applies. Then you can make your English will, and then you make your Spanish will for your assets here. And you can, of course, make similar provisions in both wills, no? So in fact, it is important to make sure they fit with each other. But yes, it doesn't, I mean, Brexit is not going to imply any difference in this respect.
Okay, thanks for that. So, Charmaine, someone's asked us, they've said that they're on long-term medication, and they'd like to know if that they obtained Spanish residency and the Spanish medical card, would they be able to obtain their medication through that system?
So again, not as straightforward a question as it sounds. It depends on the status of the person. So is the person an S1 holder, or are they going to be paying into the Spanish healthcare system, or are they going to be getting private healthcare, or are they going to be using the Convenio Especial? Essentially, let's assume that this is a person who is an S1 holder, so they're a pensioner that's moving here. What you are entitled to is to be treated in the same way as a national of the country that you're moving to, which doesn't mean that it's exactly the same as it would be in the UK. Quite often we'll find that medication is not exactly the same as in Spain as it is in the UK. But you know, like if you're registered as an S1 holder, you would go to your doctor, you would take your you know, your health records, and you would be prescribed whatever it is that would be prescribed here, which may not be exactly the same. I don't know whether that's the question that's being asked. If the question is, will I get exactly the same medication and can I get it sent over from the UK? The answer is probably no. Yeah. Right. But in terms of would you be entitled to medication and to be treated under the Spanish health system? Of course, yeah. But it wouldn't necessarily be exactly what you're getting in the UK.
Okay. Okay. So someone else said that their residency expired in 2012, and they've still got a property here. They come out, and they're asking whether that residency can be renewed, or if they have to start the process again from the beginning.
This one I kind of queried a bit, because it sounded as if the person had a green document, yeah. And I have not seen yet a green document that had an expiry date on it. Yeah. Although I am aware that sometimes people have gone into the Policía Nacional and they've been told it expired. Technically, unless it has an expiry date on it, it should not expire. Yeah. Okay. Let's assume that this document does have an expiry date on it and it really has expired. I think you would have to then start the process over again. Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, I know it's not a very satisfactory answer, but it depends on where you are, and getting in touch with the police or extranjería in the provincia that you live in. If it didn't have an expiry date on it, the advice that I've been given by whenever I've asked is that nobody ever comes off the register unless they specifically ask to come off the register.
Okay, so that's great. And a similar vein question is that someone holds a green A4 residency certificate, which was issued in 2008 and doesn't have an expiry date, and it states resident con carácter permanente, so they're a permanent resident here. They want to change it for the TIE, and they're asking whether they would be able to change that after the transition period ends. And I think we've answered that already. Basically, yes, they would be able to change it. So if you've got a green card now, and so long as it hasn't expired from what we're saying, you'll be able to apply for the TIE card either this year or even next year.
Yeah, and the only thing that people have to remember is that if the details are not correct on your green document, then you will have to take additional evidence along. The thing that is normally different is that people have moved house, and you would then have to take a copy of your empadronamiento, so that there is evidence of where you live. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had we've gone through most of the questions we've had by email up until 2:30 this afternoon, and then we're just in the chat. We'll just look at some of them here. So basically, what's the name of the place you need to make the application? So that is actually your local national police station in the area where you live in. That's where the application has to be made. But basically now the applications are, the appointments are, you have to apply for them online. If you already have full permanent residence, is any more to do? We've answered that. We said, look, advisable to probably change it over the TIE, but it's not absolutely necessary. My wife is the owner of our property, so do I need to have a rental contract or property deeds? What do I need to do? In effect, what they would do there is they would go along. You'd go along with your wife to the town hall, and you'd register on the padron, and then you can apply for residency, because you're married and she owns the property. Another one here. I'm moving to Spain before the end of 2020, but my partner of 2 years cannot come until the end of the year. What visa should he apply for next year? Will it be easier because I'll be a Spanish resident? I suppose, Charmaine, we've touched on that already. If a partner can't make it this year, rather than a partner, it should probably be a husband or a wife, because they'd have to prove that they're in a relationship for the authorities. So I can't advise you to get married online, but actually get married. But in effect, if you were married, then we touched on it earlier. It wouldn't be automatic, but your spouse would be able, as long as they qualified for the residency requirements, they would get residency as well. Right, started the exchange process for my driving license before we went into lockdown. How do I check to see where my new driving license is? Oof. Well, basically, I'd say contact the DGT where you submitted the license to. And as Charmaine mentioned, the procedure is quite straightforward. So, in effect, we take the license. So we're carrying out this task for clients. We're changing their existing UK licenses for Spanish ones, and we're doing that via the DGT. We can arrange for the licenses to be collected and then handed into the DGT. And it's taking them some time to get the new licenses back. But in the meantime, you'll have a form saying that you're in the process of exchanging it. But I'd only recommend that you exchange your driving license if you plan to spend more than 6 months here. Okay. Is there a problem getting appointments to register residency in Costa Blanca North? Are you aware of any problems there, Charmaine?
No.
We've got Monica on the line who does our appointments. Monica, do you know if Costa Blanca North if we're having any problems there?
No, not yet. Not for the TIE. When you have the resolution, you have many appointments, to apply for. It's no problem. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're not aware of any problems in the Costa Blanca North. In effect, as legal representatives, we can go online, we can check and apply for appointments and book those on your behalf. A client of ours is actually in the process of building his property, and it won't be completed until possibly the end of 2020. We hope it will be done earlier. Would he be able to use that address for residency? Well, actually, because you're not living in it at the moment, it would be difficult to do that. So let's hope. But what we can do is we can start to prepare all the other documents for the residency process. So I wouldn't leave it to the last minute. Okay. Private medical insurance, please could you direct me to a list of companies that provide policies? Do you have any of those, Charmaine? Do you have a list?
A list of companies that provide private healthcare policies? No, we can't recommend. But what I can say, and I would say this about the question that someone asked earlier around where they get appointments for registering for residency, please just look for the Living in Spain guide on gov.uk, and you will find in there information about healthcare, and there is a healthcare team and they can help you. And if you have specific issues, because I know that there are lots of people that have pre-existing conditions, which will make it really difficult for them to get cover at any cost, yeah, get in touch with the healthcare team and they can guide you through, because it may well be that the convenio especial is a better option for some people than trying for private healthcare.
Okay, thanks. And just so you're aware, so some of the experiences we've had, clients have basically obtained quotes in the UK from companies like Uber to provide healthcare cover for their Spanish residency, and they found that it's extremely expensive. So I strongly recommend that you actually speak to a Spanish an independent broker. We work with various, if you want to contact us, we can provide you with their details. We work with various companies, brokers who then contact different insurance companies to provide you with different quotes. So to be more competitive. But the difference, Charmaine, I think one of our clients obtained a quote for, I think it was about £4,000 a year from a UK provider, whereas in Spain it was €1,500 a year. So there's a real big difference.
There is a difference, and I think it's also worth people remembering, and I'm glad you've mentioned this, Alex, that not all private healthcare is the same. So there are lots of companies where the quote will include, I don't know how you say this in English, copagos.
Co-payments, yeah.
Right, okay, that's obvious. Yeah.
So basically a fully comprehensive policy, yeah.
Yeah, because if you've got to make any co-payments, that is not acceptable for residency. Yeah, and that's a really important thing for people to be aware of, because you may be talked, you know, interested in an insurance quote, a private healthcare quote that looks very good, and that you've brought down the excess by agreeing to do part of the payments yourself. And if you are in that situation, that policy is not going to be accepted for residency, because you have to have a healthcare plan that is equivalent to what the state would offer.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and basically, some of these insurance companies are more customer friendly than others, and when you contact them and ask them for that quote, it's important to say that it is for residency, because they have to issue you with a certificate confirming that you're insured and that there's no co-payments. And a basic co-payment thing, if you brought down the cost of the policy by saying you'd pay for any operations if anything happened, so that wouldn't be acceptable. Yeah, great point. What should I expect to pay a gestor for processing the TIE? Well, basically, our charges are online. We're basically charging €315 per person, and then depending on how many times we have to go back to the police station, then we're charging for those trips as well. But contact us, and we'll certainly clarify the fees for you. I read that the TIE is only for 10 years, and the green document is permanent. Sorry,
sorry. All I was going to say is that the TIE it just has a renewal date, the same as the DNE has a renewal date. You don't. My understanding is that when you have to renew it at 10 years, you don't have to prove anything. Yeah, you're just taking it in and renewing it. I suppose you're proving that you're alive still. Yeah. But my understanding is that whenever you renew your TIE, when you have the 10-year one, that is the equivalent to permanent, or in the UK, settled status. So you're not going to have to prove your income again. You're not going to have to prove your healthcare again. You're not going to have to prove your residency, where you live. Any of that again. It is simply renewing it rather than applying for it. That's my understanding of the 10-year thing.
Okay. Basically, another question is it an advantage to apply for a Spanish passport? Now, we've come across this one before, and you've got to be very careful when you apply for a Spanish passport, because you're in effect renouncing your British passport. You have to hand over your British passport, and then that means that you are subject to the laws of Spain. And that could, so for example, before you do that, I'd think carefully about the implications. And the implications, just to put it easy, is in an easy format, is under British law, laws of England and Wales and Scotland, you can leave your assets to whoever you want. Under Spanish law, 2/3 of your assets have to go to your children. Okay, so the inheritance tax laws differ. So if you've got a Spanish passport, you'd have to leave 2/3 of the assets to your children, and you can only freely dispose of 1/3. Whereas if you had your British passport, you can leave it to anyone. So before you change your British passport, for a Spanish one, just think carefully about how that might impact, and there's other implications as well. Have you got anything to add on that, Charmaine?
Yeah, just to say that I'm glad that you're as wary as I am, Alex, because it's quite funny because I've done a couple of events with the ambassador, and the ambassador's a lot more blasé about this, and he says it doesn't really matter. You know, you don't really have to give your passport back. You can have both. It doesn't matter. Actually, legally, yeah, and we did. In fact, legally, you are saying whenever you take out Spanish nationality, I renounce British nationality. Yeah. Now the UK does allow. The interesting thing is that as far as the UK are concerned, you have not renounced your nationality unless you have renounced it. And renouncing it is a process that you have to go through. You have to apply to renounce it, and you have to pay to renounce it, and you have to then prove that you're a national of another country before the UK will take away your nationality. So, you know, read between the lines for yourselves, kind of thing. Yes, I know everybody knows somebody that's continued to keep both of them, but that's the legal position. Interesting that you should talk about wills, Alex, because we all look at it from our own perspective. From my perspective, it's worth you knowing that if you, regardless of whether you've renounced really or not, if you have taken out Spanish nationality, as far as the Spanish state is concerned, you are a Spanish national whenever you are in Spain. You are not a UK national. So it doesn't matter whether you think you've got a UK passport. If you're on the Spanish books, you are a Spanish national. You will be treated as a Spanish national. And you won't be able to use, for instance, British Consular services in Spain because you're not British, you're Spanish. So it's worth remembering that when you're in country, you will be covered for wills, for consular services, for anything else, as a Spanish national, not as a UK national.
Yeah, thanks for that, Charmaine. So we've got the poll working now. Ali, do you want to pop that one up? And the poll is, are you already registered as a resident, or are you looking for information on how to become a resident? So if you just click on yes, no, don't know, please contact me to check. Whilst that poll comes out, Ali, we're just going to move on to the next question, because I'm very conscious of time. Are you sure that if we apply for Spanish residency as retired people, we can continue to receive NHS care while in the UK?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So if you're an S1 holder, you are entitled to use both the Spanish system and the UK system, technically, when you're on holiday back in the UK. Yeah. Sometimes people say, well, how do I prove that? My advice is if you're an S1 holder, take a photocopy of your S1. Yeah. And you should have the EHIC as well. You should have the UK issued EHIC.
Excellent. Okay, thanks for that. Ali, do you have the results? Do you
So
have your residence?
47% are registered.
Excellent.
45% are not registered yet, so they haven't finished off everything before the end of the transition period. One person's not 100% sure, and a couple of people want information about how they check all their paperwork is up to date and correct. Okay, brilliant. So kind of good news and bad news in that poll, Charmaine. Lots of people have got their house in order. Some people still have got to do it.
Yeah, that's about 50-50, didn't it, really?
Yeah.
So I can't plug it enough. If people have got issues, please let us know. You know, if it's straightforwardly that you just haven't got around to it, it's quite straightforward. You will know how to do it. The information is there online. There are lots of people that you can go to. I've mentioned the 3 organisations. Alex has mentioned the offer of My Lawyer in Spain. Other lawyers are available. But in addition, but if you have real issues, so if you're really coming up against problems getting registered, please do look at the Living in Spain guide and get in touch with your consulate.
Yeah. So another question here: is it recommended to register at the British Consulate?
You can't register at the British Consulate anymore. That stopped happening a while ago. So lots of people still ask about locate, I think it was. And it's incredibly annoying because, of course, the Spanish still insist that all Spaniards travelling overseas or living overseas register with the consulate, so it's really easy for them to know at any point how many people are technically in any country. We don't do registration anymore in consulates, so you just can't do it. Sorry.
Okay, and the EHIC card, so the European Health Insurance card, that many people come to Spain on holiday with at the moment, and so if they have an accident, they're covered for emergency treatment. Charmaine, that card will come to the end at the end of this year. Is that right?
We don't really know what's going to happen with it. We know that those people that have EHIC because they are S1 holders, their EHIC continues to be valid. Yeah. And that means that it's valid in Spain, it's valid, it's valid in the UK, it's valid wherever else they travel to in Europe. So anyone that's an S1 holder, their EHIC continues to be valid. If you are like us, resident in Spain and paying into the Spanish system, and we've got the Spanish version of it, which is the TSE, that is also remains valid. That remains valid for us travelling to the UK and to anywhere else in Europe. The people that it doesn't remain valid for are those people who are UK residents who might be travelling to Spain or to anywhere else in Europe, and we don't know what the arrangements are going to be for them after December 2020.
Okay, and something that's quite interesting. I mean, if you are a resident in Spain, you can actually apply for an EHIC card, and if you travel around Europe, then you're protected as well. So as a Spanish resident, you can also obtain the EHIC card, which will continue. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be working remotely in Spain for a UK company from October, spending less than 90 days in the UK. As there's a bilateral tax agreement between the UK and Spain, as long as I can demonstrate to the Spanish government, am I paying taxes? Can I continue to remain a tax resident in the UK, but register a resident in Spain? Well, basically, if you're spending more than 6 months in Spain, then there's an obligation to become a Spanish tax resident. And you would basically declare your worldwide income and assets in Spain and present a tax return between May and June the year after you arrive.
Just to say that I think it is, for me, I always advise people whenever they ask tax questions to get good tax advice, because there are ways in which you can be resident somewhere but tax resident somewhere else, and I think it all hinges on where you might know the wording better than me, where your centre of vital interest is. Yeah. So I think that if people are concerned about that, they need to get good tax advice on it. It's way beyond my area of competence, but I do know that it doesn't. The two things don't necessarily follow, and it can get quite complex. And people's circumstances, individual circumstances, are always very different. So I don't like to give blanket advice. My suggestion is that if you are technically, there's no reason why you can't be resident and tax resident in two different places, but get good advice on it.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Basically, the definition of residency, Charmaine, is spending more than 183 days in the country. It's your centre of economic interests. So this is where you make your money, and then this is where your wife and children or spouse are habitually resident. But yeah, I agree with you. It's important to obtain that specialist advice. Someone else says, I'm moving to Malaga and understand that appointments are really hard to get. Well, actually, no, we can get appointments for you. So, please contact us about that. I'm concerned really having to rent for 12 months. I intend to buy, but hopefully before a year. What I'd say to you there is, if you haven't found a property yet, obviously rent. The authorities are typically asking for a 12-month contract at the moment to obtain the residency, but I would suggest inserting in that rental contract a 6-month break clause, so that if you find a property within that period, you can actually exit that rental contract. At the moment, it's quite straightforward to change a UK driving license for Spanish one. Will the requirements change after the 31st of December, Charmaine?
This is one of those grey areas again. So we've had different answers from the Spanish authorities on this. Essentially, the problem is that when we are no longer part of the European Union, when the UK is no longer part of the European Union, the ability of other countries to check the shared database, which would show whether you've got penalties on your license or not, technically the Spanish will not have access to that anymore. So there's a conversation that's taking place about whether or not we can still do whether or not we will share access to information, which would be what enables us to do the straightforward counter. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I would recommend that people don't hold off. If they can do it now, get started. It doesn't have to be finished by the 31st of December, but you do need to have started it, excuse me, before the 31st of December. What happens afterwards, it might, I mean, I don't think that there will be an issue in terms of us being able to do the exchange. It just might be more complicated. The conversations that we've had literally in the last couple of weeks with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, they've said for tourists, they're not changing anything. As long as the UK doesn't change anything, they're quite happy to accept a UK driving licence for whilst you're in Spain, and they don't plan to change that. For residents, we're going to have to sign a treaty. Yeah, we don't know how long that treaty is going to take to sign off, and it may well be that there is a period in between where it's quite difficult to do it. So my advice to people would be, if you can do it now, just do it.
Absolutely, yeah. Isabel, we've got another question regarding a Spanish will. If I create a Spanish will in 2010, leaving my assets to my Spanish assets to my sister, and create an English will in 2016, leaving all my assets to my wife, does the English will make the Spanish will null and void?
Yeah, well, of course, it will be good to see the wills to confirm that, but generally the English wills would include as first or second clause a revocation clause. Basically, I hereby revoke my former wills. So if nothing has been specified, nothing has been said like I hereby revoke all my former wills except the one I signed in Spain at whatever the date, then it implies that yes, the Spanish will is possibly has been revoked and it won't be valid. So it would be good to confirm that, and due to practical reasons, we normally recommend having a Spanish will for the Spanish assets and an English will for the assets in the UK. I mean, we can execute an English will here in Spain, that's okay, but it implies longer, more time and more costs. So from practical perspective, it is good to have a Spanish will, but you know, depends on each one's wishes, of course.
Okay, thanks for that. Question is, Charmaine, will Form S1 be valid after 31st of December?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Someone else says we were told we had to at least live in Spain for at least 3 months before we could apply for residency. Well, that's not right. Basically, the Spanish law specifically states if you intend to spend more than 3 months in Spain, you've got to apply, and you've got to apply within the first 3 months. That's the specifics. So someone says, when you say private healthcare, does that include annual holiday insurance as arranged in Spain?
Generally not.
No. Basically, you would need a private medical insurance policy in place, which is fully comprehensive for you and all of your family.
I think your advice previously, Alex, is the best advice, which is if you're looking at private healthcare, make sure that you've told them that it is for residency purposes, because then they should be able to ensure that it covers the things that it needs to cover. As I said, it needs to be something that provides equivalent cover to national healthcare. Yeah.
So I have a nice comment here. It's a very good idea to be married rather than just live as partners, especially if there are children. If one of the partners dies, the remaining one has no rights under Spanish law. Well, basically, what we would suggest is if you're not married, then you can register as a pareja de hecho and also put in place a Spanish will. Okay. My partner is Irish but worked in the UK for most of his life and is entitled to a full UK state pension. Am I correct in thinking she will get healthcare via an S1 in the same way as myself? So basically, if your partner is Irish and she's lived in the UK for most of her life, will she get an S1 then? Yes, she will, won't she? If she's a resident in the UK.
Yeah, she's entitled to an S1 if she's resident in the UK and she's been paying her contributions in the UK, then she's entitled to the S1, yes.
Yeah. Someone says, do you know whether an Isle of Man driving license counts as one you can simply exchange, or will we need to sit out the tests?
I think that might be one of the tricky ones, because I had a conversation this morning and I think there is something to do with, I don't know whether, is the Isle of Man considered a dependency or an overseas territory? I think it's a tricky one. You would need to come back to me specifically on that one for us to look at it.
And
I think it's not straightforward.
Or also contact us. I'm sure you'll be able to pass your test. We own property in the UK. I understand you have to pay tax on worldwide assets, even if there is no income. Should we sell up before Brexit? Well, this is a really good point, actually, Charmaine, because if someone if someone buys a property in Spain now and becomes a resident, declares that to be their main house, and they've got another property in the UK which they live in and was their main residence before they moved to Spain, if they sold that UK property, Spain would tax them on that, okay? So they would pay capital gains tax in Spain on that. So our advice to clients is, if you're selling up in the UK, you're selling your main house, sell your main house before you basically become a resident in Spain and basically, you know, register your Spanish property as your main residence to avoid that potential capital gains tax. Right, we've got 5 minutes left. I'm running through this. Do supporting documents for residency, proof of income from the UK employer, proof of savings from the UK bank need to be officially, professionally translated into Spanish, or the English versions be sufficient? Well, actually, they do need to be translated. And we've got a sworn translator who works in the office. She can do that for you. But again, sometimes it depends on the official you're dealing with on the day. But by and large, because most applications are being submitted online now, we are arranging translations. Here we an interesting one. Provided my TIE application is submitted by the 31st of December, will there be an extension of time for it to be processed? So in effect, Charmaine, if we present the TIE application for someone on the 31st of December, they will then have until the 31st, till the 30th of June to obtain their TIE card. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think you're given something whenever. So I guess it depends on what the person is kind of concerned about. But in terms of your right to be in the country, I think you're given a volante, or a piece of paper that that confirms that your application is in process. Yeah, it doesn't confirm that you are a resident, but it allows you to be moving around whilst they're making the decision about your residency application.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone else says, we live in the UK and plan to move to Spain before the end of the year to apply for residency. I wonder if it would be safe to start the process in the beginning of December, or will it be too late? I would basically start the process. I start looking at the process and the documents and collating the documents now, so you're aware of the issues to avoid any disappointment. If you have no children, can you leave your assets to whoever you like under Spanish law? Isabel?
There are certain rules in relation to the rights the spouse would have, a life interest, and so in fact, the spouse is one of the legitimarios, we call it, like entitled to part of the state. Of course, if you don't have children, you have more flexibility in relation to the assets under Spanish law, but still, there is some binding rule in relation to the spouse if there is a spouse.
Can I get my residency in my local national police station? Yes, you can, but you have to apply it online.
Provided you've got the green documents already. If you're starting from the beginning, you have to do it through extranjería. No?
Yes, yeah. When I rang S1 place in Newcastle, they told me there was no difference between tax residency and domicile. And if we change to permanent Spanish residency, we would lose our rights to NHS care. We are swallows and usually spend between 3 and 6 months in our Spanish property.
It's not true, and it's really annoying whenever Newcastle do this, because they should know better. If you would like to follow up with us, please go to the Living in Spain guide, I'm not going to give you the email address partly because I don't know what it is, get the contact details for the healthcare team and send them an email, and they will follow up and they will come back with confirmation for you.
We've had that kind of conflicting advice before, actually, Charmaine, out of Newcastle, because people apply for Form S1, and if just so people are aware, is if there's two of you applying for Form S1, one of you hasn't retired but the other one has, then the younger member of the couple can actually become a beneficiary of the older person's Form S1. But listen, we're running out of time. We've had lots of questions through. I've tried to answer as many of those as possible. All I can say is, if you've got any other further questions, please contact us. Contact Charmaine and at the British Consul and look at the Living in Guide Spain. We've also got, Charmaine, a great Facebook page, which is it Brits in Spain?
Yeah. Brits
in Spain. There's been some great videos coming out of that, out of the embassy, talking about the TIE process. And other than that, well, listen, thank you ever so much indeed for joining us, Charmaine, and answering our questions. We hope you've everyone enjoyed the session today and got what they wanted out of it. But as I said, if you've got any other further questions, please contact us. Our email address is inquiries@mylawInSpain.com. Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you for everyone attending. Thank you, Ali, Isabel, Patricia, and Monica. And we look forward to seeing you on our next session.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and have a good weekend.
Bye.
Buen fin de semana.